Good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's full council meeting. Agenda item 1, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Exec. The Chief Exec has no announcements. I have a few. So I just want to start off by joining our communities here in Kirklees and across the world in grieving the death of His Holiness Pope Francis, and to just share that our thoughts are with Catholics and the Roman Catholic Church at this time. Tonight is also my last meeting as chair, and I want to... Don't be that sad. I'm still going to be around. I just want to take the opportunity to thank all those who have cooperated this year and all those who haven't. You've certainly kept me on my toes, and I've had a wonderful time chairing these meetings, and I'm sure Councillor Smage will do a spectacular job from next month onwards. Whilst we are just talking about my year, those who are aware, the Mayor does support a charity each year. This year, my chosen charity is the Forget Me Not Children's Hospice, and as part of my fundraising efforts, I have recently launched a GoFundMe page. I've had lots of comments this year where people have said, last year's Mayor had no hair, this year's Mayor has too much of it. So I've decided that I will be raising funds, donating my hair and hopefully raising funds for that. So please keep an eye out for my GoFundMe page, and I'd be really grateful if people could contribute towards a very good cause. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2. Apologies for absence. Councillor Sokol.
Yes, Madam Mayor, apology from Councillor Yarina Amin and Councillor Harry McCarthy.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Cathy Scott. Her husband's very poorly. Councillor Paul Moore, whose mum's passed away. Councillor Yusuf saying she's obviously not here. And Councillor Ahmad Anwar.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors Holt and Bolt. And Councillor Smith is on his way.
Thank you. Just also want to take this opportunity to wish Councillor Bolt a very happy birthday if he is watching. Councillor Darwan, please. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. So before we approve the minutes, can I just make members aware that due to a printing error, page 10 of the minutes contained in the pack has been updated. So a revised copy has been circulated in the chamber. The online copy is correct. So I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 5th of March be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
Seconded as amended, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smage, please vote by a show of hands. Okay, that is carried. Item 4, declaration of interest. So members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any items should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? Okay, so can I also remind any members who have declared an interest to complete the form and submit to the clerk by the end of the meeting. Agenda item 5, petitions from members of the council. Are there any petitions? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An online petition with 3,198 signatures from local residents asking for some action to be taken about the accident black spots at the top of Shepley. Already provided the online list to the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Cooper.
I have a petition on behalf of Change Kirklees, who want every member of this council to have a say over the decisions that it makes, and to replace the cabinet system where 8 councillors make all the decisions with one where we all make all the decisions. 600 signatures here, a lot more to come.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. So, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matters of both petitions be referred to the appropriate Executive Director for investigation. Okay. Agenda item 6, deputations and petitions from members of the public. There is one deputation this evening, so please can I invite Claire Walters to present her deputation, please. Hi Claire, welcome to the meeting. Please introduce yourself and advise the Council of the subject matter of your petition, what it requests, and please pass it to the clerk.
Thank you. My name's Claire Walters. I'm a parish councillor for the Kirkburton parish, and this is my colleague.
I'm Pamela Brook. I'm a parish councillor for Kirklees.
We have come to ask that the planning conditions for Laneside Quarry are enforced. How long do I get? 3 minutes or 5, by the way? 5, thank you. The reasons for the planning conditions, according to the 106 agreement, are to protect and safeguard the site, ensuring proper reclamation for woodland and agriculture, local amenity, visual amenity and nature conservation. We don't believe that the owner's actions so far or his plans for the future are in line with these conditions. The Laneside Trust was set up under Schedule 6 to act as a liaison group between the quarry operator and the local community. Since the site was purchased by the current owner in 2018, he has treated the members of the Trust with disdain, to the point where the parish councillor, the chair and the vice chair have felt compelled to step down. Agendas were incomplete, providing the committee, including the planning officer, no opportunity to prepare ahead of the meetings. No annual management plans were agreed. No visits to the site were arranged for members of the trust. Mitigation areas created by the previous owners have been seriously damaged by farm animals or neglect. Kirklees' own diversity officer has expressed concern about this, yet planners have not enforced conditions. A footpath was closed in January 24 without notice or permission, despite being expressly told by Prow not to block it. And it still remains closed. An ancient woodland was bulldozed without notice. There was at least one bat roost in the wood, but there were no reports of a survey prior to its destruction. The owner was told by a Kirklees officer to replace the woodland and wildflower meadows or face action. Their response was to refer the matter to their lawyers and threaten Kirklees Council with costs. Nothing further was done. A parish councillor and the chair of the trust have also been threatened with legal action for questioning their actions. The owner refuses to reveal the number of trucks entering and leaving the site, citing commercial sensitivity. Yet billions and billions of tonnes of soil have been brought onto the site, reputedly as preparation for landfill. And vehicles are moving in and out outside permitted hours. We believe the owner intends to restore the site as a farm, yet the original agreement states that the whole road and all related buildings are to be removed on completion, which is not compatible with this. Over 600 residents and nature lovers signed a petition asking the council to protect the area. Our letter to the executive chief exec and planning officers have all gone unanswered. The owner has history. We're in touch with other groups across Kirklees and beyond who are fighting to conserve their beloved wildlife sites and rights of way from destruction by his diggers, and finding that the council is failing to uphold the law. We feel let down. That money means power, and this quarry owner is above the law. I actually went on site a couple of days ago. This site in 2018 had 8 red letter species, 5 birds that are of national importance, all gone. Every stitch of woodland is gone. And the ponds that were put in for mitigation have now almost completely grown over. So all the valuable wildlife is now going, and obviously it's now gone, but we believe that it will not be put back, not be restored. And it's heartbreaking, to be honest, and we'd like you to take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please invite Councillor Turner to respond?
Madam Mayor, thank you, and thank you for your deputation this evening. So I have a response for you. This is a technical response because this is a live planning issue, so I can't make any personal comments on this. And I am very much aware that you and local ward members are very much actively involved in this issue. So officers are fully aware of all the concerns raised and are actively engaging with the operators and the local community by a regular 6-week liaison group meeting. A site visit and open day was undertaken in 2024, and further days have been offered by the operator to liaison group members. As matters currently stand, phase 1 of the pre-agreed phasing plan for restoring the site due to be completed by 2025, with the final restoration to be completed by 2029. This was delayed due to landfill operations ceasing during COVID. Officers are in discussions with the operator, and a revised phasing plan is expected this year to allow further time to fully restore the site, including a small area of intended meadowland grass areas to the south side of the site where cattle are currently being kept. While the grazing cattle was not intended in a management plan set out in the section 106, officers consider it appropriate for this to be assessed as part of the expected revised scheme. The removal of the woodland did not form part of the approved planting scheme, and the trees were not protected. A Section 106 legal agreement also requires the submission of a management plan for areas of land restored. The operators have submitted information relating to a management plan for areas where permanent restoration has been completed. Principally to the northeast of the site, this is now being considered. HGV movements are restricted by planning condition, whereby the operators are entitled to have an average maximum of 660 HGV movements each working week. That's 5.5 days, with a maximum of 220 HGV movements on any one day. No evidence has been obtained to demonstrate any breach of this. The operators are required in the terms of the Section 106 to pay the annual highway maintenance contribution under the commencement of landfill operations. Material currently imported to the site is not landfill, but material to construct lining prior to accepting landfill waste. Officers are monitoring the commencement of any landfill operations. Officers are also monitoring the site, although it is a working landfill operation, and officers are aware of temporary works affecting land levels and diversion of a path. These temporary works do not breach the terms of planning permission. Public rights of way officers are aware of the issue of the unauthorised obstruction / diversion of public footpath. Public rights of ways officers are visiting the site to assess any matters that need to be addressed. A number of concerns have been received regarding harm to protected species. Residents have been informed that the police are the appropriate authority to contact with the element in the event of harm to protected species is witnessed. So I'm sorry it is a technical answer, but we cannot comment personally on live planning applications. So thank you very much.
So can you send me that so I can respond in writing, because so much of that is in error.
Send me your email address.
It's completely in error. Shall I give you the email address?
Thank you, Claire. Okay, there are no public petitions, so we will move on to item 7, which is public question time, and there are no public questions either, so we will then move on to item 8, which is the West Yorkshire We'll crack on with the rest of the agenda whilst Lee goes to speak to the member of the public. We haven't received notice of a question, so it won't be asked. So agenda item 8, West Yorkshire Combined Authority minutes are to receive for information, and the minutes are for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few months ago, I learnt that Kirklees were holding a speed limit review via WICA on safety outside schools. As a ward councillor, I was completely unaware of that this review was being conducted by WICA. So I'd like to know why myself as a ward councillor and my colleagues, why we weren't informed. I would like to know what criteria have been used in selecting the 35 schools and 2 Sure Start centres in Kirklees. I'd also like to receive a list of the 35 schools in Kirklees and the 2 Sure Start centres that have been selected. And finally, I'd like to know when the project was approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Councillor Patterson isn't here to respond. Will you be doing that, Councillor Crook? Or?
Only to say that we will have to provide you with a written response because Councillor Patterson's been held up.
Thank you. Okay. So agenda item 9, page 35, which is the pay policy statement for 25-26, reference from Personnel Committee. Councillor Crook.
I mean, I propose that we approve the annual pay policy statement as presented.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Taylor.
Reserve the right.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this matter? Okay, we'll now go to the vote. Please use your consoles. That is carried. We'll move on to agenda item 10, written questions to the Leader, Cabinet Members, Chairs of Committees and nominated spokespersons. So written schedule of submitted questions and responses to those questions has been circulated. So I will now invite members to ask any supplementary questions in turn, and the appropriate member will respond. So one supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. So can I invite Councillor Vickers for a supplementary if she has one?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Pinnock, for your comprehensive reply to my question regarding the issues with SEND provisions within Kirklees for children and their families. And I'm glad to hear of the investment of time and money that has been allocated to this. As you've said, this is a complex and widespread issue affecting not just Kirklees but the whole of the UK. However, within Kirklees there is a distinct disconnect between what is being publicly stated and what parents and families are experiencing. As we know, just 35% of EHCPs are being issued within the 20-week statutory time allocation. And I would be interested to know how many of those EHCPs are being reviewed due to unsuitability. As a councillor, I have seen this reported time after time. For example, although one young lady was issued her EHCP within the allocated time frame, The allocation of school was unsuitable for her very complex needs. This young lady, in the words of her parents, loves jumping, climbing, and has no concept of danger. The school she was allocated has a high, accessible balcony, making it clearly unsuitable for her needs. There is also an issue with implementing vital support indicated within the EHCP. Several families report one-to-one teaching support not being implemented, essential therapies not being provided, hostile school environments, and parents' requests being ignored or dismissed. One family I'm working closely with were forced to tribunal in November, which they won. However, they have yet to receive vital court-mandated therapies for their child. They have requested face-to-face meetings to discuss how they can assist the local authority, but have been unable to speak directly to anyone who will explain why this delay is happening. Children and families who have suffered school-related trauma are having their email requests for help ignored, dismissed, or not followed up, and so feel left alone in what are often very difficult personal circumstances. It's not been surprising to learn that as they struggle with day-to-day living, compounded by lack of support from local authorities, that 75% of marriages between parents of SEND children end in divorce. The very minimum that these parents should be able to expect is clear and efficient communication from officers and counsellors. Even when the answer for them is not immediately clear, there are worse things than being told that we don't know. Follow-up emails need to be provided to ensure that parents and caregivers are kept in the loop and are included in every decision made for their child. After all, parents are the ones who know their child best, and their expertise needs to be utilised when decisions are made. In addition, I'm concerned about all those children with special educational needs who do not have parents who have the time and resources to fight for their interests. We know there are issues, but this could just be the tip of the iceberg. Can I suggest a task and finish group is set up to work alongside the Children's Scrutiny Panel to investigate, hold to account and assist officers who are working with these most vulnerable people, both the children and their incredibly hard-working parents. And I would very much welcome an opportunity to meet with you regarding this complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers, for that. You can see originally in the written response that we've tried to provide a very detailed response to what is a very complex situation. And I know you've raised quite a few issues there, but I want to take this opportunity really to tell you a little bit more about what's been going on, as well as addressing some of the issues that you've raised. First of all, the Council's ethos is that all children deserve the best start in life, irrespective of their ability. And we want children to have the best experience. And I'm definitely committed to that. And we know that our children, they need to have the right learning, the skills and motivation to become, responsible adults for the future and successful workforce for the country, again, irrespective of ability. So it is something we need to address quite early. As you've pointed out, SEND is a national issue. It's a complex and national issue which isn't unique to Kirklees. Many people have actually described it as an educational crisis, and it is a crisis. What I've found as a cabinet member, very new to the role, is that in a lot of instances, mainstream schools and academies are not equipped to deal with children with special educational needs, because each child is unique and each child needs an educational package which is tailored to their needs. And as indicated in the written response, we've talked about issues around getting EHCP plans done and done on time, and there has been some difficulties. We have to accept that. But in December last year, the Department of Education announced £740 million funding to be created for special places for children with SEND. And of course, that additional funding has been welcomed in Kirklees, but it's just not enough to fix that black hole that we have. And we're trying to be quite creative in how we address these issues. One of the things that we're trying to do in respect of children with special needs is to build 2 schools. And I've mentioned this within the body of the written response there. This will at least alleviate some of the issues around children with special educational needs. The 2 schools I'm referring to are Woodley School and Joseph Norton. And just say a little bit about those schools. Woodley School will be tailored for children who have complex autism. Joseph Norton, which will be built on the old Eton site, which is in my ward, will have boys and girls. At the moment, it's only boys, but it will have boys and girls aged between 4 to 18, which is a really good spectrum. And those are children who will have educational and mental health needs. So the idea there is that these special schools will be available for children with special educational needs, but also children can stay within area, because we know a lot of children are having to go out of area to access the type of school that the parents want. So specifically in response to some of the questions that you've raised, myself and Councillor Kendrick have been meeting with parents. We've been meeting with parents face-to-face. We've also been dealing directly with inquiries from parents with children with special educational needs. And that, of course, is to get a better understanding of what the issues are, but also be that conduit to make sure that parents are able to access the information and the officers that they need to get the answers that they need. We haven't been shying away, and we certainly haven't been ignoring emails and approaches from parents. We want to ensure that parents have what they need and children have what they need also. What we have been doing is we've been meeting weekly and fortnightly with senior officers to discuss individual cases. One of the cases that you mentioned there is one of the cases we have been talking about regularly. And obviously the aim of that is to create a positive plan of action to remove barriers and blockages to make sure, as I've said, that families are able to access the information that they need. And we've called that our new portal. So as I've said, we meet regularly to talk about each individual case that's been brought to our attention to see how we can address those. And I'd say that we are responding regularly to parents who have been in touch with us. As I've pointed out, without the funding and the resource, it's difficult to provide the parents with the answers that they want. And sometimes, as I said, the council has to find creative ways of dealing with supporting children. And as I've said, it's a national issue. It's something that's affecting all local authorities up and down the country. Some local authorities are worse than Kirklees. It's nothing to be proud of, but we are doing what we can do with the resources that we've got. Just a little bit about what I've been doing as a cabinet member to give you an idea. So I've made a commitment to visit all the SEND schools in Kirklees because I want a better understanding of what's going on with our children. And specifically, is there any learning or any good practice that I can see in those schools, which has been really helpful for me understanding what's been going on. Yesterday, I went to the Ethos College in Dewsbury, which was great, speaking to the head teacher there, talking about some of the issues with SEND children, why there seems to be an increase in SEND children, especially after COVID-19 has hit. But also talking about the excellent work these schools are doing, so over and beyond what you'd expect. So what I was told about were things like schools having to use their budget to fund wellbeing services like therapeutic services, food parcels, clothes, trainers, breakfast. Also parents actually using the school to use their washing machine because theirs is broken down at home. So these schools are often, they go over and beyond what you'd expect a school to do. And as I've said, this is a special school. We only have 8 in Kirklees at the moment. We are having another 2 built. We recognise there are issues. We are trying to ensure that these establishments are built for our children, as I've said, so they get the best experience in life. I'm more than happy to meet with you. I'd like to meet with you. I'd like you to understand a little bit more about what we're doing with the portals especially. And if you have any specific issues, please do approach me and I'll definitely work with you. In relation to the task and finish group, I'll take that under advisement. I will get back to you about that. It isn't something that myself and the Cabinet are considering at the moment, but I don't know what the future holds. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Pinnock, for your very lengthy, comprehensive supplementaries and answers. If every supplementary and response goes on for that long, I think we'll be here past midnight. So can we just try and keep them as short as possible, please, so we can get through as many as we can in the time allocated. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary for question 2?
I do, and thank you for your response, Councillor Turner. So Kirklees has secured 0 grants from West Yorkshire Combined Authority's Brownfield Housing Fund. Other areas in West Yorkshire have fared much better. Calderdale, a council with a much smaller population, has secured 1 brownfield housing grant. Wakefield has 2, Bradford has 3, and Leeds a massive 13 brownfield housing fund grants. Now, the reason that the Brownfield Housing Fund is so important is that brownfield land is more expensive to develop than housing on our valued green fields. Accessing this funding means that we can meet more of our housing targets on previously developed land and so protect our local environment for potential development in the future. I'm sure many of us here could take you to derelict sites, places that are an eyesore, that would benefit from this funding and help provide much needed affordable social housing without damaging the places people value. Has the council not identified suitable brownfield land, or is there not the capacity within the council to make these applications for funding?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, for your secondary question. So we have applied to the Wicked Brownfield Land Funding. However, Wicked's criteria are prioritised projects which are low risk and able to deliver quickly. Unfortunately, we haven't had any sites in this category. For example, we have tried putting forward estate buildings, Daisy Hill and the former Mayman Lane depot, all of which are high risk and longer term, so we don't meet the criteria. However, the really good news is that we have secured funding for the 1 public estate brownfield land release fund for 2 council-led schemes. Hymole Lane is part of the Registered Provider Cluster Programme, working with 13 Group, and more recently the 1.25 million for estate buildings. This was done in collaboration with Wicker. We're also progressing a substantial bid for Homes England Brownfield Infrastructure and Land Fund for the Dewsbury Riverside housing site. And we are continually working with Wicker to explore a pipeline of future sites for brownfield funding that might meet the criteria of any potential future brownfield funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Robinson, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock, for your response, and it's great to see that there are active programmes to get communities engaged. However, whilst in theory the goal may be to have the council, local councillors, community groups and the community itself all working together, it seems that some of the council's decisions have made community gatherings impossible, such as the reduction in the ward budgets, making it harder for community groups to get the funding that they need from council themselves, and changing the way that we go around about applying for road closures. Fundraisers can only get the community groups so far. Without the help of the council and the ward budgets, much loved events and needed community events, such as summer fairs, Christmas markets, can't happen. So my question is, will the Cabinet reconsider these changes and not only restore the ward budget, but make it easier for community groups to get the funding they need to run these events safely?
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Robinson. I'll try to be quite quick. I just really want to say that decision has only recently been made. It was made on the 8th of October to change the criteria. The aim of that obviously was for to encourage the community to collaborate, work together in terms of partnerships, like you say, allow community activities and community organisations to happen and encourage groups themselves to realise the ideas that they have and put those into practice. But there were reasons why that decision was made in October. And first of all, the reason was made because of finance, because the council, at the time was in a difficult financial position. But the other reason was to ensure that ward budgets are used effectively to deliver value for money and that the decision-making was transparent. In some wards, that's not the position. That's not how it is. In some wards, the majority of the budget is given to one particular group. That was never what the ward budgets were intended for, is my understanding. So it's more about fairer distribution of the ward budgets, and that, as well as that, it's also about all three councillors coming together and agreeing, irrespective of what party background you're from, councillors need to come together and agree how much they're going to give. There is an opportunity, if more money is needed, for the portfolio holder to agree in exceptional circumstances, if you want to go beyond the criteria of what that is. So there is scope there, but at the moment, it's a recent decision. It's probably not going to be changed anytime soon anyway, but thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, indeed, I do. Thank you, Councillor Pinnock, for the comprehensive response. And I agree with the Cabinet Member that the ward budgets should empower councillors to address the specific needs of their local communities. However, this commitment seems at odds with the Cabinet's recent decisions to drastically cut ward budgets and impose excessive restrictions on how those funds can be used. These changes significantly undermine councillors' ability to apply their local knowledge and judgment to support valuable projects that may not now meet the new narrow criteria. Surely, the very purpose of a ward budget is to enable councillors to identify and support initiatives that deliver real benefits to their communities that they know best. I also note that there are, for certain projects, no viable alternative funding streams available. In light of this, I would also ask, will the Cabinet reconsider these changes and restore councillors' central role in deciding how ward budgets are allocated to best serve the needs of our residents?
Councillor Pinnock.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Very similar to the one before. At the moment, there isn't any indication that we are going to change the decision anytime soon. It's only a recent decision, 8th of October. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. It's not a debate, Councillor Smith. Councillor Burke, do you have a supplementary?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Pinnock, thank you very much indeed for the response to my question. But I must express concern that there is no mention of the vital role that elected members play in this process. We are key to enabling thriving communities, working directly with residents, volunteer groups and local organisations. Yet we are increasingly finding ourselves constrained in how we can use our limited ward budgets to support those very groups. In some cases, Cabinet members, as you've alluded to, can help and can assist with that, but what we have found is that Cabinet members have actually prevented us from allocating funds to organisations simply because they haven't previously received support, without even having any conversation with the elected members who are responsible for allocating the limited funds. So again, a conversation would be appreciated to discuss that with Cabinet members, portfolio holders who are having insight to that, to discuss it with the elected members and say, why are there exceptional circumstances, and have that conversation. That would be a good idea. But in the instances that we've experienced, that has not happened, and we've just received notification, the Cabinet member has said no. So once again, this highlights unnecessary interference and control from Cabinet members, which is both inappropriate and we see is wrong. In some instances, volunteer groups have had to create an entirely new group in order to overcome this, with the same people involved just to be eligible for funding. How utterly ridiculous. This kind of bureaucratic walk around not only wastes time and energy, but completely misses the point of what we're all trying to achieve, supporting those already doing excellent work in their communities and not trying to punish them. The approach completely overlooks the reality in many wards where only active community or voluntary group exists. So, as you mentioned, some areas don't have active groups or they're not using the funding appropriately, and I get that and I totally understand it. But at the same time, we shouldn't be punishing those who are trying to do the very best they can with that, delivering an extraordinary amount for their local area. If restrictions are placed on funding them more than once or for a certain amount, we risk not only undermining the very fabric of our community life, but also disillusioning the very volunteers and groups who give their time, energy and passion to support their communities. They should be supported, not discouraged. So I ask, how does this approach work in practice? What rationale is there for imposing such limits on elected members who are best placed to understand and respond to local needs and not having interference from portfolio holders? And let me be absolutely clear, no group that is consistently delivering for its community should be penalised for being active. Preventing them from putting on local events or applying for funding more than once or for a certain amount of funding is just not fair. It is completely unacceptable. So if you do as you've suggested and go by the council plan that we have, then you will agree and understand, and hopefully understand, how we can achieve better things working together for all of our communities. Thank you.
Reiterate what I said before, I'm happy to meet with you. I'm more than happy to do that. And I think it's also important to point out that ward budgets are not the only place where community groups can get funding. I accept that in some it may not suit everyone, not one size fits all, but there is other funding streams out there, and I think it's important as councillors that we know those funding streams and we access those, or at least encourage community groups to do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ahmed, for your response. I'm very interested by the last paragraph in your response where it says the Council will continue to work together with councillors and our community to resolve issues around bin collections. I've been trying for months to work with the Council on the issue, and the issue is specific to a number of streets, Hallis Road, Little Hallis and Gregory Drive in Kirkburton. The problems are not being caused by the residents of those streets. It's other people parking. They leave the space. The problem is the two cul-de-sacs of Hallis Road, the entrances are really too narrow if there's a single car parked near the entrance, which means the wagon can't actually get into the cul-de-sac to actually collect and empty the bins. They haven't had the bins collected for over 4 weeks now. And there was an occasion recently where there was a blockage on Turnshaws Avenue. They came partly up Turnshaws Avenue, got to the blockage, then just gave up on the rest, instead of going the other way round where they could have collected all of the bins. I keep raising this issue. Residents are raising this issue. We often hear in this meeting or in scrutiny meetings, we get all these statistics about how many bins are being collected, and we've collected 99 point whatever it may be of bins this week. So you have data. What you don't seem to be using is using that data to identify hotspots where there are persistent problems and then looking at how we address these persistent problems. It's not the residents' fault that the road is too narrow. It's not the residents' fault that other people turn up and park their cars there. But we're failing continually to do anything to help these residents. And I've got to ask you, as the Cabinet member responsible, what do you do? What have you done to make sure that you're aware where there are persistent problems? Are you aware of problems like this? And I'm sure there must be other areas across Kirklees where there are problems. We need solutions, not just telling residents it's their responsibility to make sure that parked cars aren't there, because they're not their cars. I've had the police out. The police have done some ticketing of some cars, but some of them are parked legally. But because they're parked legally and there's a very narrow access, the bin wagon can't swing round to get in. So it's never going to be resolved. So I'm asking you, what are you, as a Cabinet member responsible, going to do to ensure that the residents in these streets get a regular bin collection? I fear every Tuesday, because I know I'm going to get emails and phone calls from residents there because the bins haven't been collected again. And I've run out of excuses, to be honest. So I'm raising it very, very publicly here tonight to try and embarrass the council into actually doing something positive about it, rather than fobbing residents and myself off continually. So I'll be interested to hear your response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just want to, first of all, it's important to note, which you've clearly recognised, the disruptions are not a failure of just the waste collection service, but a direct consequences of the inconsiderate behaviour of not the majority, but the minority of residents. Majority are very cooperative, listen to what we have to say, and they move their vehicles, or they know when the collection bins are. And the council undertakes several steps to address the access issues. You've mentioned one of those, obviously, where legally somebody parks there, but the wagons can't get there. And there's a number of initiatives that the council deals with and does, which is door knocking, and I think I mentioned it obviously in the response, distributing leaflets, even changing the collection points if that's what is needed, and organising specific collection times so people can move their vehicles. So we do all of those. And I think what we have to remember is that it's the consequences of these inconsiderate behaviours. It's the people that are not actually behaving once door knocking has been done. They've been asked to move their vehicles. People know when the collection dates are. We try and change those collection dates as well. And even then, people are disrupting their behaviour. So that's important in terms of what we need to do. I think we're doing enough, but we can do more. And it's important that we actually get that message across more in terms of engaging with our local residents, local organisations, to make sure that they get that message across as well. However, as you know, there are limits to what we can do within the resources that are available. And whilst we have a limited number of, I would say, flexible vehicles, which are smaller, which can get round, the bigger context is there's 193,000 bin collections every week that has to be done. And we have to prioritise all of those bin collections in terms of making sure that they get done. And it's important that we do that, and we try and address that. In terms of what can I do and what can we do if there is a failure, if there's any failure in any of the services within the council, you complain. Make sure that the council inquiries are aware, and also you complain to your councillors, but more importantly, complain to myself as well. So I think it's important that we do address those issues through people if they are not happy with the service, and that gets done. And yes, there is an effective data system within the service in terms of the refuse collection service. And they do use that in terms of either bin collections or complaints or issues, and they are done fairly effectively and efficiently. And our performance indicates that we're well over 99% in terms of, obviously, the service that we provide. So we are doing what we can. I'm not saying it's the best, but I think the council is providing the service, the best service it can within the resources that we have available. And I would, again, pass it back to yourselves in terms of the ward members, is to please engage yourselves with the residents, and then also engage, engage the council to make sure that we continue to do our work in the most efficient way that we can.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I suggest we suspend standing orders so we can listen to the entirety of the questions? There are a lot of valuable questions there, asking important questions. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay, we'll just vote by show of hands. Okay, so Councillor Lawson has moved that we suspend standing orders and we extend the time for agenda item 10 so we get through all the questions, and that has been seconded by Councillor Marchington. So, should we use our consoles or should we just show of hands? Show of hands. Okay, all those in favour for suspending standing orders? Okay, all those against? All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. So we will extend the time for that agenda item, and we will move on to question 7, which is Councillor Longstaff. Do you have a supplementary?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the reply. Obviously, there's a lot of Huddersfield Giants fans extremely disappointed at the moment not only with our results, but also what's been happening. I'm a season ticket holder, so I go through the pain every other week. But they're really disappointed with Kirklees Council. We talk a lot about our heritage and culture. The George Hotel, the foundation of rugby league, is famous the world over. That was in 1895. Even I wasn't around them days, but it was famous around the world. We were promised a few years ago a rugby league museum in the George Hotel. That's now not going to happen. Looks like we're going to move to the Shea for the next few years. There's no idea yet, as I understand it, where the new ground's going to be in Huddersfield. I would ask that the Kirklees Council and the Cabinet take a much more proactive interest in this so we can save our heritage and protect our culture and not lose our Super League team in Kirklees. And no disrespect to Dewsbury and Batley, I've been there numerous times and they're cracking clubs and they're nice grounds. So thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just point out that the response that's gone out from officers is not the response I wrote, so I'll send you the more detailed response. I know it's got corrupted or whatever, but it's not what I wrote on Monday. So, the Huddersfield Giants have chosen, as you rightly point out, to relocate to the Shea Stadium, subject to the ongoing negotiations with the council, as this allows them to play their games in a stadium that meets the requirements of the Rugby Football League, and this maintains their standing in Super League. The Huddersfield Giants have an option to remain at the John Smith Stadium in Huddersfield. However, their choice is to relocate to Halifax and maintain their presence in Super League. The Giants have made clear their preference is to return to Huddersfield at the earliest opportunity and are actually pursuing options to do so. I'm sure we would all welcome the Giants back in Huddersfield as soon as possible, and we will continue to support the club in their search for a new home. There's a lot of work going on, there's a lot of conversations with the owner of the football club. Some of that is subject to, obviously, commercial sensitivity, so I can't go into detail, but I can assure you that I and other officers are working as hard as we can with Ken David, the owner of the Giants, to try and find a home in Huddersfield. It is not without its challenges, but we are working very hard alongside him to try and find that home for him. Obviously, any site he finds is subject to planning permission, and sticking a stadium in parts of Huddersfield is really difficult, given the topography and some of the built-up areas. But I can assure you, we are working really hard with Ken to try and find a solution to that. Going back to the George, you're right. A few years ago, somebody did suggest that there may be a museum in there. But if you want a hotel, you can't have a museum. The figures just simply don't stack up. Somebody would have to subsidise a museum. It would make the whole project unviable. So unfortunately, that is not the place. I am absolutely convinced that when we open our new museum, there will be a significant reference to rugby league in that, as there will be within the hotel itself. The deal we have with the operators, that hotel will reference Huddersfield, and that part of Huddersfield's history is a museum. So when it's opened in a few years' time, you will see the story of rugby league throughout that building.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Longstaff, do you have a supplementary for question 8?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the reply. Thanks also, I dug out my O-level French book from 1968, so I've now translated what you said on the first bit. Just so you know, I'm born and bred in Huddersfield. I'm proud to say I come from Huddersfield, so I'm not knocking our town. But I have to point out the feedback I get from other people. That's my role as a councillor. And yes, if I had a preference, I prefer Laser Quest than shopping. I hope Pam, my good lady wife, is not watching at this moment when I say that. However, I've done my homework. We're the largest town in England. Everyone quotes Halifax, Wakefield and even Bury to me. We're far bigger than all those three. Those three towns still have a shopping offering. I just want us to not surrender on this and to try and get a shopping offer, as well as all the good things we are doing as well with the culture and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longstaff. Councillor Turner.
I use Google, it's much easier. I don't know why people are probably commenting to you, because I was the one that made those, and I haven't had any feedback from anybody specifically, even the local businesses. So I hope you're right. Let's not be negative. We need to stop having a glass half empty when it comes to that. Not only Huddersfield, all our towns and village centres, all of them. We need to be positive. And we know times are tough for shop owners for a variety of reasons, some of which we can control, but the majority of which are beyond our control. But constantly talking them down really does not help. So in doing a bit of preparation for today's meeting, I spent some time walking around a significant part of the town centre one afternoon last week. And like you, I'm not a shopper, so I had to use my best judgment on this. But what I did find, we have 3 new shops on Albion Street, 1 new shop on High Street, 1 empty shop on New Street, which is in the process of being let, because I'm aware of who's about to take that over, 3 new shops on King Street, 1 unit in King Street being ready for a new tenant. The reference to Slug and Lettuce last time, that's been revamped and will reopen as a different type of venue. And of course, the fantastic new entertainment complex, The Light, which quite frankly on that afternoon was heaving. We've also what I would call a wet fish shop in the town centre. Now I'm like you, I was born and bred, well, born in Wakefield but lived here all my life. I don't remember there ever been a shop in the town centre selling lobsters. Now, just for a bit of balance, I don't know when we've ever had a wet fish shop in the centre of Huddersfield. And I don't know what that says about our change in taste, but perhaps we're becoming a bit more gentrified. But that's another positive investment. We've also seen the new supermarket open on Trinity Street. The streets were very busy despite it being a midweek afternoon. It's always been the case that some shops will close for a variety of reasons, some, as I said, outside our control. There is clearly an appetite for others to move into these units. So let's all support all our towns and village centres and stop being negative.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. It's starting to get a bit rowdy in here. Can we all just calm down a little and let people ask their supplementaries and let the Cabinet members answer? Item 9, question 9. Councillor Longstaff, again.
Third one, last one, don't worry. And thanks, Madam Mayor. And I'll make this really short. Thanks to my colleague for the reply. We also had a good conversation this afternoon about Vision Zero. It's a real ambition objective, and we agreed, both of us, to try and raise the profile and obviously achieve what, forget politics for a minute, it's the reduction of accidents which affects us all. So that's my comments.
Councillor Ahmed.
I fully support what he said. I think Vision Zero is one of the most important things for us. Clearly, reducing road accidents zero by 2040, 2038 is one of the most important things that we can do. And I think we've got to work together and collectively to make sure that we can do that. And there are obviously things in place with the Council as well as with West Yorkshire Combined Authority as well in terms of the work that we do. And I'm looking forward to obviously working all party to make sure that we can continue with this work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes. Could there be another alternative reason for filling in holes in the road with the recent government funding when they have previously been identified for resurfacing? Thank you.
Councillor Ahmed.
I don't think there is any alternative. Obviously, everything is being developed all the time, and there's always going to be newer and better methods to be able to fill holes. But unless we can actually purchase very expensive machinery in terms of assets, then there will be a better and more effective way of filling holes and potholes. Potholes is always an issue for everyone. We will continue to do what we are doing. And I think overall our performance is fairly good in terms of potholes and filling of them, over 99%. It's a consistent level, even though we continually have more and more potholes to fill because we just don't have enough money for the full highways. So at this moment in time, if you ask me, is there a better alternative? Yes, there are better tools and equipments that are available, but I think the council, when it is in a position to be able to budget those and afford those, then we'll be looking at those as well. But we will continue to improve continuously improve our methods as we continue to fill all the potholes.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Councillor Munro, again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, isn't it the case then, in relation to question 12, that this council will only accommodate requests from the community and community groups when there's a clear benefit to the council and it suits the council? How can that be construed as supporting communities? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
No, of course not. The council doesn't only support organisation when it benefits the council. We have a strong commitment to working with communities across Kirklees, and as I pointed out in my reply, we work with loads of groups covering a vast range and a multitude of things across Kirklees. So no, anybody who's got a positive community group that's got a positive attitude and wants to move forward, we will happily support them. But it's not just a case that has to benefit the council, it has to benefit communities.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Darwan, do you have a supplementary for question 13?
And thanks to Councillor Patterson. The Council already knows about the health needs via joint strategic assessment. It has already been identified that Dewsbury residents experience significant health inequalities. I genuinely respect Councillor Patterson to acknowledge this terrible injustice. We all know that is a disgrace. Doesn't this council realise that every day the closure of the sports centre and the swimming pool continues? They are actively undermining the physical and mental well-being of the people of Dewsbury and Batley, which they claim to want to improve. Children are suffering, older people are suffering, families are suffering, young people are suffering, the whole population is suffering. What is there to find out? Don't you think that this is just a very expensive, time-wasting exercise and a shameful decision to deny the local population access to a facility indispensable to their health and well-being? I just want to read a comment from a constituent from Dewsbury South. Having kicked the can down the road for the past 18 months, they're now kicking the can down the motorway and actually paying for it. They say they want to know the gaps in provisions. We know the gaps in provisions. No Dewsbury Sports Centre. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Apologise for being late this evening. Thank you, Councillor Darwin, for your question. I hope you and other councillors from North Kirklees will contribute to the work that we are going to be doing in North Kirklees, to Dewsbury and Batley more specifically as well, to identify what the real health needs are, alongside schools, community groups, existing provision in terms of sports centres, private, public, etc., etc. We don't know entirely what the issue is with regard to the health inequalities of Dewsbury and Batley residents. We know there is, yes, certainly from the JSNA, as you say, but we also know that the actual sports centre was not contributing to increasing the health of people in Dewsbury and Batley. So we need to know why that was. Certainly it wasn't the whole population that was using the sports centre, and we need to know why people weren't using the sports centre, how they would prefer to meet their own health needs, their own well-being needs. We need to know what activities we can encourage them to undertake to increase their health. I have to say I don't believe the sports centre was indispensable, nor do I believe that the whole of Dewsbury and Batley are suffering as a result of the closure. But we certainly want to make sure that all residents in North Kirklees, across the whole of Kirklees, but particularly again in Dewsbury and Batley, do undertake some healthy activity which will improve their health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary for question 14?
Madam Mayor, yes, thank you. So, on the question of land known as HS9, if the undervalue exceeds the upper threshold of 2 million, the council will have to apply to the Secretary of State for approval. Will it not then be too late to take that step when you've already obtained planning permission? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner?
No, because as we pointed out, we can't get a true value of the land until we know how many units are going to be on there, what the exact mixture and tenure of that will be. So once we've got planning permission, we can, if it exceeds that, then approach the Secretary of State, which I'm sure, being a wise, well-educated politician, will give us approval.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ahmed, for your response. The reason I asked the question was I had assumed, but I'm not sure whether it's clear from this or not, that major A roads would be a priority and keeping pedestrians off major A roads would be a priority for this council from a road safety point of view. There's a major A road that runs through my patch called Barnsley Road in Flockton, which I think people may well be familiar with. Sure, I must have spoken about this once or twice before. I'm struggling to get anyone to clear the pavement on Barnsley Road from Hardcastle Lane towards Bretton. The pavement has narrowed to the extent that now even just pedestrians have to walk on the road to get past. Never mind if they've got a buggy or a child with them or anything like that. On a major A road where at that point you're at 40 miles an hour. When I've asked for it to be tackled, I've been told, oh, they can't do it because it would be dangerous for staff because of the speed and danger of the road. So apparently it's okay for residents and pedestrians to walk along there, but we're not prepared to clean the pavement so they can walk safely. So can I ask you what you're going to do about that issue, please?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Ahmed?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'm not aware of the specific case and the street that you're talking about, into the Red Road. Can you please, I mean, you've just given me the information, so if you can forward that detail to me, I'll personally take that on board and get that investigated and come back to you, because I don't really know what the issues are in terms of why that hasn't been done. So I will ask the officers for a response, and I'll come back to you with a response to that query.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Yeah, this is in relation to the repairs of Cleckheaton Town Hall. And in the answer I have, it refers to remodelling. And my understanding is that remodelling was not part of the initial budget decision in March. Given that is the case, perhaps Councillor Turner can explain what is intended by that word in relation to Cleckheaton Town Hall. And further, given the Cabinet decision in December to pass responsibility for the Town Hall to the community, when and how are the Cabinet going to involve in meaningful discussions at an early stage in understanding what is meant by remodelling?
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Work is ongoing at the moment to assess exactly how much money needs to be spent on that building. And part of that discussions that we had when we were on site with you, after we walked around the site, we thought that perhaps there may be value at looking at whether certain parts of the back of the building that had been added in recent years may be to the value, it may be valuable to the project to remove that. So that was just a discussion, so officers are having a look at that. We are continuing, as promised, to work with the community to understand their aspirations for the town hall, and have commissioned the locality to support them to build their capacity and produce a business plan. Those conversations with that group is ongoing, and we are continuing, as I said, we are continuing to work with them. And I can, at this moment in time, from the work they've already done, they are very, very serious. They're making a really good job of where they've got to at this moment in time, and they must be applauded for work they've already done.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Turner, for your response. It does give me some reassurance that this issue is on its way to being sorted out. However, I really ought to point out that it is a criminal offence to carry out work which needs a listed building consent. And for the benefit of other members, this is a listed structure, this cross, without obtaining it beforehand. And I don't know why this wasn't done at the time, which I ought to point out was 2 years ago. But can I ask, please, that this omission be rectified as soon as possible? And also ask, why wasn't this done sooner? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. I've seen pictures of the state of the cross prior to it being removed, and I have to say that it looked very unstable. So on health and safety grounds, I believe it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness, if you like. If that had fallen over, that could have... You know how big it is? It was balancing on one corner. If that had fallen, that could have wreaked havoc with people walking past or on a vehicle. So, yes, perhaps it didn't actually stick to the letter of the law, but I believe in health and safety terms, it was absolutely the right thing to do. We are continuing to speak and listen to local people about the return of the cross. It's important that we return our list of buildings and structures to their former glory, as we've been doing so across the district. But however, the cost and complexity of reinstalling the cross is dependent on where it is returned to. To return to its original location would risk a further vehicle collision unless significant changes are made to the highway. This would likely be in the thousands of pounds. We are currently investing some money and time to have a proper reassessment of the state of the cross and the positioning of it. That work is ongoing, and once that's done, we'll be able to come back to you with a thing. But that work is ongoing at significant cost to making a detailed analysis of it at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked a question about the FOIs in Bradford TNA, about the Oakenshaw Cross. It seemed to outline that there was some confusion and some hands-offishness about some of the department's approach to actually reinstating the cross. In your answer, Councillor Turner, you've put here that actually looks like a normal way of working. That is deeply concerning. We've been at this now 3 years. You're sick of me talking about it. I'm sick of you telling me the answers that I'm asking for. We've been at this 3 years. Is it going to be another year? Is it going to be another 2 years, 3 years, 5? Can you give us an idea of where we are on our journey to reinstating Oakenshaw Cross? Because quite frankly, saying that this is normal for a really nice piece of heritage structure is really disappointing. And the fact that we've had to go on for so long, I don't know, it does not seem normal at all to me.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. As you will well know, the planning department is separate in effect to the council, and many of our departments, services have to consult planning on many issues, and that's simply what's been going on. They've been consulting planning, because planning are the ultimate arbitrator on this side. So they've been working with planning, and perhaps we should perhaps said working rather than consulting, but they are working with planning. That also involves no doubt English Heritage and our own heritage officers. As I've said, we are at this moment in time spending a significant amount of money on a feasibility study to discover where and how we can take this forward. And once that work is complete, we'll be able to get back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Pinnock. Kath Pinnock.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. If as the Cabinet decision in last December, it was suggested by ward members and agreed by the Cabinet to investigate the possibility of using whatever funds were remaining, which was going to be well over £1 million, that's been sitting in the council pot for a while, to use that to make urgent repairs to the town hall, the main hall in the town hall ceiling, to make it, open it up, make it usable again. That's all that needs to be done. And that was part of the Cabinet decision. What is very frustrating and comes out in the peer report later, which we will discuss, is that at no time has any Cabinet member or officer contacted ward members to say that that money is what remains of it and what is going to be available to use or not use. So we're left in this limbo of local people saying, is it going to be used? The only issue in Cleckheaton at the minute is the town hall. All three of us walking down into town, that's the question we get asked all the time. And can that money be used? Can it?
Councillor Turner.
At this moment in time, as I said earlier, we are working on a detailed study on what the actual work required, the minimum work is required to open the town hall. Some of that work is quite complicated. There are some issues in there that we need to address, and that, as I said, that work is ongoing. It is hoped that if the bill, if you like, the estimates comes under the 7.5 million which has been allocated, then we won't be able to use the town fund. So it is hoped that we don't need to use the town fund towards the restoration and reopening of the town hall.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Matt. Nearly there, eh? Nearly there. My supplementary to my question, what assessment had been done from Bradford Road to Oakenshaw Chain Bar of the addition of a bus lane. Thanks for your answer, Councillor Ahmed. Quite a good technical answer, thank you for that. What I did wonder was, had there been any look at putting lights at Chain Bar? Because otherwise, all you're doing is delivering buses down to Chain Bar to wait as they negotiate the Chain Bar roundabout. So there's that issue that I was wanting just to tease out. The other is that had any recognition gone on about the number of cancellations of the 268, I believe, the 268 from Oakenshaw down to Cleckheaton, which at the moment is, I've just had a photograph now, with the next two are cancelled, so anybody who's there is stuck there. Are we really in the business of trying to put civil engineering for ghost buses? Is that our business?
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, John Lawson, for the question. I'll answer it, if that's all right, because it's a transport portfolio scheme rather than a highway scheme. I realise there's a little bit of sort of crossover and confusion there. So the written response indicates first that the assessment model mandated for the full business case as part of the funding application to WICA. So I think that was the technical answer that you referred to. So justification of the investment of public funds is quite rightly done through a standardised model, and that's the sort of the technical answer that we've already covered. Beyond that process description, it is part of the council and of the West Yorkshire strategy to improve modal shift and bus transport, so space allocation for buses and so on. So there is a broader kind of strategic aim to improve bus journey times, and there is actually an improvement in journey times for other transport users as well, because if you take some of the car users off the road into buses, obviously there's less congestion for cars as well. In terms of your specific questions around lights at the roundabout, I'll have to get back to you with a technical, with an answer to that. That's a specific question that I don't have off the top of my head. In terms of bus route cancellation, so the franchising of the buses that's underway in West Yorkshire will initially adopt a bus network which is based on, I think, March 2024. So the improvements will not be additional services, but they will be reliability of service. So there's several ways that will be done. One of them is in using transponders in the buses, so we know exactly where the buses are, and holding the operators to account in terms of the percentage of buses that do run. So ghost buses will hopefully be a thing of the past, as it were. So I'm confident, and also the likely lotting strategy means that we will be an early adopter of the new franchise model. So I'm hoping that I'm confident that the bus services that we experience in Kirklees within West Yorkshire will soon be improved at that standard. And obviously, once we've got control of the fare box and so on, as the franchising model has explained quite comprehensively, we'll be able to reinvest that funding in more frequent bus services over time. So not only more reliable services, but more frequent services. That doesn't answer your question about lights at the roundabout, but I will get back to you on that by email. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. And Councillor Lawson, again.
Thank you, Matt. Last one. Well done. So I asked also against the same project about the impact and justification of the removal of many mature trees and hedgerow. Thank you for your answer again. We talk about time and location. Can you confirm that we're talking about the same location and where we are on the timeline when that needs to happen? Are we talking about after the completion of the bus lane, or are we talking about a little bit sooner than that? Because of course, as soon as we can get mature trees and mature hedgerows in there, the less damage that will have happened. I would also ask, will you be talking to the community in Oakenshaw to make sure that they have some kind of input into what goes into the border treatment, if you like, of the new bus lane? Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
Thank you again, Councillor Lawson, for your question. In terms of the replanting timeline, again, I'd have to get back to you on that. I believe there is replanting as part of the overall scheme, so that's a positive. And obviously, we have to balance the loss of some trees and hedgerows if we're going to increase space allocation for buses, but there is, to balance against that, an environmental advantage if we can improve modal shift and get more people travelling on buses. So it's always a balance, isn't it, when we're investing in civil infrastructure that way. In terms of consultation with local residents, I believe there has already been a consultation process with local residents in terms of the scheme itself, and I think some objections were received. Are you referring specifically to consultation on the type of replanting that would be appropriate? Because I think that the replanting would be representative of any loss of tree or hedgerow that was part of the scheme. So I don't think it would be appropriate to consult on whether it would be a different type of hedgerow that was replaced. You'd want to replace like for like, or go for an improvement in terms of biodiversity net gain as well. So I will look into the detail there, but I suspect that the definition of what we're replacing will be part of the design process that's already been undergone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. That brings us to the end of all the questions for agenda item 10. We'll move on to agenda item 11, which is the minutes of previous meetings of Cabinet and Cabinet Committee local issues. They are here for information only and to note. I'm now going to call for a quick comfort break. I say quick. If you could all be back by 7:15, please, and we will begin with agenda item 12. Thank you. Okay, so we will continue with agenda item 12, which is holding the executive to account. So part A of this item, council will receive an update from the leader of the council in relation to agenda item 13, the LGA corporate peer challenge. So oral questions and comments to cabinet members on their portfolios and on any cabinet minutes will be in part B. So we'll do part A first. Anyone who has any questions for the leader will ask straight after the leader's done her presentation, and then we will move on to part B, where you can ask questions to the wider cabinet. So don't all press your consoles and start asking for Councillor Hawkins. I will keep the questions for Councillor Patterson right at the start, if that's okay. So yeah, when you're ready, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to stand here and present this, if I may. The slides are up all the way around. Well, thank you for this opportunity. I really wanted to reiterate, really, this again. I mean, we've already discussed it at Cabinet, we've discussed it at scrutiny, but I really thought it was worthwhile bringing it here to Council today as well, because it's such an important event for the Council and for the work that we're doing. The LGA, Local Government Association peer review, sorry we're on the first slide still, you can go on, but is the gold standard assessment for councils in England. And the LGA, as you hopefully all know, is our local council's representative body. As well as representing our sector with government, they carry out an important role in helping councils learn from each other and improve the services they offer to residents. They offer training and all sorts of seminars, etc. As again, I hope you all know and you all do participate in from time to time. But this peer review process is something a bit special. It happens, or it should happen, once every 5 years. And it gives the Council an independent view of our performance and makes recommendations on areas to improve. The review team is made up of experienced staff and councillors from different parties, I will hasten to add, and from other authorities who can take an impartial view of how we're doing as an organisation. Reviews give authorities a unique insight into their performance, and all councils are encouraged to do this, as I say, once every 5 years. So the previous peer review that we had done was in 2019. So we were up, our 5 years was up, but we did see it as an opportunity too. It is an opportunity in itself, but we also, back in 2024, when this was first broached, we had a new chief executive, other new senior staff, and a new leader in myself. So it was an opportunity for us to set a baseline for this new administration. So this is a council with big plans to improve services, strengthen our economy, and an ambition to deliver for every one of our communities in Kirklees. That's why we've been so open with the LGA, and again being transparent and bringing it here today and to scrutiny, etc. Because we know that their independent expertise can help us to deliver for local people. We welcome their feedback and have agreed a comprehensive plan to implement the recommendation that they've made. So, slide 2. Thank you. The peer review, as I've already said, is a very thorough process. Their team looked at hundreds of reports, I don't know how they manage it, financial information and performance data. And the 5 pillars of their focus, are shown here on the slide. Most importantly, they held conversations with 140 people who know us best, i.e. our staff, our councillors, our partners, community groups and service users. And then a feedback session was held for all those who had taken part at the end of the week to say thank you, but also to share their initial findings. So I do want to say thank you to all the councillors in this room who took part in the process and to everyone who gave up their time to help us improve. So the LGA published their findings in March, and we have already put together our response and action plan, following debate and scrutiny and in conversation with group leaders. The action plan was agreed by Cabinet in April, following discussions at Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee and with leading members. So, what did they find? These are some of the initial strengths that they told us about. The team acknowledged that we now have a stable relationship or stable leadership in the council, which has allowed us to set out a clear vision for the future, to provide accountability, to get the basics right for our residents, to invest in our future and balance the budget and promote a greener, healthier Kirklees. They also recognise the progress we've made to stabilise the council's finances and how important that has been in protecting service delivery for the future. And the way we present information about our performance was praised. That's a crucial way that we can use to improve services as well as being open with our residents. And then a few more strengths. The review commented favourably on the positive relationships we have with our partner organisations. I mean, that's really important because so many of the services we deliver are done in partnership with others. The team also reported that we have a strong and respected management team working well together who have the expertise to deliver the vision we have set. Our staff are motivated and positive about their work, and that's such a vital ingredient for improvement. And this is a council which is governed well. Our cabinet acts as a team, and we don't shy away from the tough decisions that we've had to take that are needed to benefit Kirklees. But we've also been active and engaged scrutiny panels and audit committee members that oversee our work. It's always helpful to get independent assurances on our strengths, but more importantly, it's the recommendations in the report, 8 in total, and our response to them that will make the difference to our residents. The peer review team advised us to keep a tight grip on our finances. After all, stable finances underpin all the services we deliver to residents. We've had a lot of success in transforming our services to benefit residents, particularly in children's and adult services. But the team thought we should do more to share that learning across the organisation. They want us to look at our ambitious plans to invest in our local economy. We need to balance the scale of our ambition with the resources we are likely to have in the future. Like most other parts of the country, the review team recommend we need to be as ambitious for house building as we are for our economy. And we can strengthen our links with our business community. They will be essential for future prosperity. And for us in the Chamber, the review team recommends that we work more collaboratively and that we put our communities first before our politics. And they want us to expand our planning horizons, strategic planning, not planning, physical planning. Since COVID and the cost of living crisis, a lot of councils have been forced to think short term. In Kirklees and across the country at large, this is time now for renewal. We need to seize that opportunity and look further into the future, and that's certainly something that we're wanting to do. So some of the key actions from our action plan. We've just digested the review team's observations, and we're already delivering on many of those recommendations. We've entered this process in a spirit of openness, and our response will continue to live up to that aim. In total, there are 42 actions or different ways we will implement the review's recommendations. And I've just this slide here, and I will just describe just a couple of them from the action plan, and the rest, of course, are in the full report that you've actually got on the next item on the agenda. We will publish a long-term council plan next year. We've already established a culture refresh for our council workforce. I hope you might have noticed a key part of our council, it's there on the slide there, philosophy, which we want to share good practice across our workforce. And plans are already being put in place to engage more with our business community. We will be hosting a summit later in the year, and we will connect businesses with community and voluntary groups. So, with every council seat up for election next year, we will make sure that we've updated our member development framework so that every councillor gets the training and guidance they need to do a great job for their constituents. We've cut back too much on this in the past, relying on party machines perhaps to make up for the difference, but I think we've learnt our lesson this year. This year's budget was the most open process of this kind in this council's history, but we will go further and publish a budget book to increase transparency. And we've already made changes to later years of our capital plan, and we will review our investment programme with external help as necessary to maintain the grip we already have on our finances. So we've already made a start in implementing on all of those 42 actions in the plan, and we will update the council on those actions in the summer. And then the LGA will be returning in September to look at our progress with a further report due later or next year. We welcome the scrutiny and accountability of this process. So finally, we've brought this to the council meeting tonight because transparency and accountability are some of the great strengths of the peer review process. But we're also talking about it because all councillors have a role in delivering those improvements, whether that's through your committee roles, through a scrutiny role, or simply by being an elected member. So I urge every member of the council to read the LGA's report. It's not too difficult. It's not bedtime reading, really, as well as our response and action plan. And I urge everyone to take part in the development opportunities that arise from it. There's a lot to digest in this process, but the plan we've put in place will help us achieve our wider goals. So once again, I thank you. Thank you to everyone who took part in the important review, and I look forward to debating the findings and recommendations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. So Part A is now complete, but before we move on to Part B and you ask any questions to the rest of the Cabinet, do any members have questions for Councillor Pattison in regards to the presentation that she's just made? Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't sure whether to make these comments in the next part or whether in this part, but I do have some comments specifically for the action plan, so I'll leave that till then. I know what you're saying in terms of some of the improvements in the journey that we're on. That's to be commended and recognised. I think there's been a lot of hard work gone into that. I just wanted to pick up on some of the points that are less positive, it being me. So I would ask, what does transformation of council mean? This has been a bugbear of mine for a number of years, and I'd still like the leader to be clear about what she thinks it means. Does it mean, and I quote, exploring what might currently feel like thinking the unthinkable? It's quite an ominous phrase, as it says in the report. What would that mean to you, and what would that mean to Cabinet? Because that's quite a dark phrase to use in a public document from a peer review. The capital plan, especially the regeneration projects, are criticised in strong words for a peer review. It recommends a hard look at its affordability, that the cost of services, the cost of servicing the debts will put more pressure on the revenue budget, and it asks how it will contribute to the sustainability of the council overall. Now, these are questions that the Liberal Democrat group have been asking for some years, and more recently they were echoed by our own auditors. So I'd probably like a comment on that. I know you say we're going into a review, but the pressures are still there, and we still need to think about that massive borrowing that's going to affect our current ability to borrow. I think the last point I'd just bring out is the political dimension. They also picked that up. They weren't blind to it. It talks about some of the upheaval in the last elections, but also about some of the behaviours in meetings, and urges a respectful approach from all members. Now that's a fair point, but I also think there's an opportunity for Cabinet to reflect on its own culpability here. We have many residents who are frustrated about not having access to information, or that some actions are taking too long to rectify, or are repeatedly going wrong. When councillors try to address these issues, sometimes, not always, but sometimes we struggle to get answers. So what I'd say is where a lot of frustration lies for councillors is when that we're notified after the fact, when something important happens in our wards, or not with full information, or even worse, when we're notified by members of the public or the press. And what I'd say is all that frustration that's pent up by this lack of comms mustn't be embedded into a cycle of starvation and blame. And that's a really horrible place to be. So I really hope we could manage ourselves out of that one quicker rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I'm going to start with your last point first, because I think that is the most important point. And certainly, that is what I've been calling it getting the basics right, but that is exactly what or one of the things in getting the basics right that I'm referring to. Absolutely, I think we've all, Cabinet members and others, have recognised when we've not been told something appropriately at the appropriate time or in a timely fashion. And it's certainly something that certainly officers, I think, have heard from me personally several times now, that we've got to get this sort of thing right. We have got to get our ward members involved, get the messages out there right, and there should be no learning after the event or from the public of important issues that are happening in people's wards. We do need that notification. There shouldn't be any struggle to get an answer, because yes, that's certainly being transparent. And if any member is struggling to get an answer from anybody, then certainly raise it with if it's a Cabinet member, raise it with me. But I'm feel quite confident that no member of the Cabinet would deliberately or even inadvertently perhaps give you a fob off, or try to pretend that something's not happening, or whatever you're feeling about it. Certainly, if you've got problems with struggling to get an answer, come to myself or a Cabinet member, and we will make sure you get that answer. You may not like the answer, but we will get you an answer, that's for sure. Moving backwards through your questions, in terms of what the peer review and auditors said about our capital borrowing, etc., I don't think they were advising us not to do it. They were cautioning us, in both cases, to make sure that we were aware of what we were doing. And certainly that's, we were. We can't, nobody, the capital plan, the massive capital plan that we have embarked on, we embarked on that before COVID, before Brexit, before any cost of living crises, etc., etc. And yes, things have changed. And borrowing is not as cheap as it used to be, etc., etc. So, of course, we've already made some changes to that capital plan, and no doubt we will be making others. But certainly, what we're not doing is not continuing with our ambition. We do need to invest in our communities, in our economy, in our infrastructure, to be ready to prepare ourselves for the future, to make the best of the future for our residents. And just finally then on transformation, Of course, we need to sometimes think the unthinkable. We might quickly dismiss it, but transformation is not thinking the unthinkable and then doing it. Transformation is having a root and branch look at an issue, a service, a problem, looking at all the different options as to how that could be solved, how it could be dealt with differently, and then doing something about it, making that change. That's the transformation. That's where that comes in. It's making that change in the end. What we think, meanwhile, is irrelevant, but it's what we do in the end that makes the difference. That's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Cooper?
It was interesting hearing the Leader of the Council refer to how great the budget process was that we all went through till 1:30 a.m. in the morning of the following day of the meeting. And the thing about that was it's completely predictable, absolutely predictable that we were going to be in that position because discussions weren't had. We knew what was going on. There was no, we knew that all the amendments were going to fall. All those things happened. And it was only a few days before that there was a request for collegiate working, which was just far too late. But the Leader did describe this as the most open budget process ever. Now, I'd take issue with that. Councillor John Lawson has quite correctly identified the lack of a budget book. And so all the time we were having to try and work out what those lines and those cuts and those pressures, what was behind that. What actually was that? And so we had to do that. If we had a proper budget book with the savings and the implications of those lines laid out, we would have had a much better idea about what it was that we were trying to do. We spent a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of what was actually going on. So it was still we're in charge with the cabinet process without understanding the reality of the political situation. And so you ended up in a position where you have a Labour cabinet implementing a Conservative budget. Now, you may be on message with number 10 by doing that, but is it actually a good way to run the council? So yes, we do need to have a budget process which is more open and where members, particularly in this political environment, are better informed than they have been at the moment. So no, it wasn't a perfect process, and I think anybody who seriously looked at it and seriously was up till 1:30 a.m. in the morning realises that.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. It was a far more transparent process than we've seen for many a year. We certainly started the public consultation well before Christmas, in the run-up to Christmas, as it was all taken place in the 6 weeks or so before Christmas. So we certainly made information far more widely available. We gave the public far more information than we have done in recent years as well, and we did it earlier. We had a lot of meetings with all groups prior to the meeting with the Chief Executive about the budget process, so that you were just as informed as the Cabinet was in terms of what was going on. In terms of the request for more collegiate working, it's a shame I had to make that request. It would have been nice if perhaps other groups had come to me in the first place and said, what can we do to help? How can we work together to make sure we do get a budget through? Or come up with an agreed budget. Unfortunately, despite many opportunities that I've offered to groups throughout the year, they haven't always been taken up. But the budget book will make a bit of a difference, not a lot, because there's not an awful lot more information in that than is available, but we're certainly keen to improve the process as much as we can. I hope the Conservative group will forgive me, but for saying that our budget was still passed They did have some input into that, yes, and I'm happy to work with them to include those amendments that they made. But our budget, our basic budget, was still there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Yes, thank you. So, what was a bit disappointing about the presentation was the lack of acknowledgement of some of the criticisms which are within the very balanced report that has come from the LGA peer review. And unless, as a council, we acknowledge those criticisms, then progress is going to be much diminished. So the first point I want to make is this. This was a LGA peer review report to Kirklees Council. Now, Kirklees Council are the 69 members. That's who the council is. And on the very first page, we have, of the item 13, we have the report and action plan are now being presented to council for noting. Now, it does seem to me that if you want to be more collegiate, more cooperation between members, then you don't present a report on how the council works, what it's doing well and what it's not doing well, and say it's here for noting. For me, that is unacceptable. And the second part of the action plan is here for noting. Now, it should be not the Cabinet's plan, but the Council's plan. And unless there is that engagement, involvement and understanding of responsibility, it will remain as the Cabinet plan and not the Council plan. I've been at the other side of peer reviews and various councils across the country. I know how it should work. The second point I want to make, excuse me, is about the capital plan. Page 103. The capital plan is of significant scale and magnitude of £1.4 billion to 2032. And then it goes on. Given the timing of the peer challenge, now would be a good time to revisit the scale of the programme to ensure it still fits with the Council's overall aims and intentions, and to take a hard look at its affordability. In other part of the report, it refers to the external auditor's concerns about the scale of the capital plan and its affordability, which Corporate Audit and Governance has also raised in one of its meetings. It would have been helpful if that had been recognised by the Cabinet, since it's no longer a council report, since the explanation is that the scale of that capital plan is reducing services across the borough. That's what the report says is a consequence of such a large capital plan. And the last point I want to make is about the references to councillors. And I echo what Councillor John Lawson has said. Councillors who are not engaged at cabinet level or chairs of committees or chairs of scrutiny are getting increasingly frustrated at the lack of information, the lack of involvement and engagement in day-to-day issues affecting their wards. That is increasingly an issue that this council has to address. That's why members are frustrated, because we don't get to know what is going on and why it's going on and whether or not we could be involved in it. a good case in point. The A643 in my ward has, I think it's probably a national
10
record
seconds, Councillor.
of one which I would not want to repeat, of 310 pothole fills. It was going to be patched up before Easter. Guess what? And have we been told why? No.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. I think in my presentation I certainly did acknowledge the criticism, and that is what the action plan and the responses that are contained in that action plan are there to deal with. The, not necessarily criticism, but certainly recommendations for improvements, and in some cases criticisms as well. That's what that action plan is all about. So I'm certain we did have acknowledged that. There's been plenty of opportunities right from the very day or the last day of the peer review visit for all members and others to have some input or certainly to find out what's going on. I mean, there were over 50 people were invited to the feedback session, that original feedback session. It's certainly been mentioned at leading members' meetings several times. It has been on several occasions, both to OSMC and to the Cabinet, where unfortunately, when it went to OSMC, there were two members other than myself there present, and when it went to Cabinet, no member turned up other than Cabinet members. And certainly we would have welcomed the input there, the questioning from any member on the peer review in its findings and our action plan. But sadly, that was not to be. And that's the same for the understanding what is going on in terms of the council. I mean, you digress slightly to say that you want day-to-day involvement. Well, get involved. There's plenty of opportunity via scrutiny, via Cabinet meetings, via the council meetings, and in lots of other ways. Informal meetings, which any member of the Cabinet you've heard today offered to meet with different members to talk about different issues. We're certainly not trying to make sure or to keep any member in the dark. And the scale of the capital plan, yes, of course, again, as I've already said, we are reviewing it. And the auditor's concerns, I mean, the auditor wouldn't be an auditor if he didn't raise concerns. That's what his job's about. That's what he has to do. Could have been a she, but in this case it was a he. They're right to make sure that we understand what it is that we're doing, as was the peer review and their comments. They're cautioning us to make sure that we are aware of what we're doing and how much this is costing and where our priorities lie. And certainly, I wouldn't say that the scale of our capital plan is reducing any service. It's different money for a kick-off. Most of our services, obviously, they are funded by revenue funding, which is a completely different source of funding to capital funding. I know there's the interest that from revenue funding that is needed to support the capital plan and that capital funding, but it is separate pots of money, and we're certainly not really making sure that we do make sure that services are there as best we can. And of course, spending on roads, again, is something completely different in terms of where that funding comes from, because there's a lot of government guidance that we have to adhere to when it comes to what we spend on our roads, unfortunately. So, and whether or not this should be more for here today, for more than just noting, it isn't part of the council's constitution, so we didn't need to bring it here at all. I'm pleased to have brought it here, so you have got your opportunity to fully debate its contents. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to act as a bit of a backing group to my ward colleagues and also focus on this word collegiate. Now, it's all very well using that word, it seems to me, but in order to be collegiate, I think you need to be inviting. And some of us not in the Labour group suspect that there is a patronising attitude that says we know better, or we know best even, and this kind of puts people off. Now, I'm not wishing to speak for other members, but I know that there are many occasions when, and of course we get asked questions by people in our ward, and we are reckoned by the public to know what's going on. And sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry, I have no idea. We have not been told. And that is, how can I put this? Deeply frustrating, I think is the phrase. And it shouldn't happen. Now, all right, you're going to say, I want to live in an ideal world. But in a better world, even if it's not ideal, you give as much information as possible to all members of the council, even people you don't get on with very well, because there may be something that's going to happen in their ward and they ought to know about it. Now, it doesn't actually say any of this in the peer review, but I do wonder whether some sort of issue related to the communication strategy should have said it's got to be better between all members of the council, and acknowledge the role that councillors have as community leaders. We are the people who the public think knows what's going on. So I would like to no, I won't use the word plead. That's a bit strong. But I would certainly like some assurance that we get told a lot more about what's going on. Something that isn't a state secret, for instance, that we could be given the information so that we can pass that on to members of the public who are often interested but also affected by what's going on. So I say all this in the spirit of wanting to work together. I've been here a long time, so have some of my colleagues, and we've got to know a lot of people very well and get on with people. And sometimes you do wonder whether you're rowing the same boat, as it were. So please, let's have more openness so that we can all be more collegiate.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you. Absolutely, Councillor Pinnock. I'm sorry I don't sit next to you in planning committees anymore. I used to enjoy speaking to you and getting to know you, etc. But we certainly have the Cabinet, if I may speak for all the Cabinet, we're certainly not trying to patronise anybody, and we certainly don't think we know better. But that's why we work together as a team. Not one of us knows everything, and we have to work as well with the senior leadership team, the officer team as well. So certainly we don't know that, and I'm very sorry if that's the attitude that's come across. You should know what's going on, of course you should. I've already said so. It's really frustrating when something happens in your ward or a member of the public comes up and says, what's going on? And you have to say, and I do sometimes, have to say, I don't know, I'll have to find out. But I do go and find out. But also, I will say that all officers know damn well they are meant to involve ward members on ward issues as much as possible. And there's no lack of communication on what the council is doing. Everything we do is in the public domain. Each week you get, as members, you get lists of issues or press releases that are coming out from the comms team. They're constantly flooding us with things like that. There's also the other more public documents that they put out, which you can sign up to. I mean, I forgot what it's even called now, but it's the newsletter that all members of the public can sign up to. You can sign up to those as well. All the cabinet papers are in the public domain. All the committee papers, all scrutiny papers. That's how you find out what's going on. You read those, you turn up at the meetings, particularly if you're a panel member or a member of a committee. Unfortunately, too many people are not turning up at these meetings, and so you will be left in the dark. If you don't come along, if you're not participating, then you won't know what is going on. Certainly, I do want to be as open as possible, and do tell me what it is that you haven't heard, or you don't. I know you won't know what you haven't heard, but when you hear it, tell me.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Cahoot.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pinnock, I think, just took some of the words right out of my mouth with reference to collegiate working and with reference to the leader of the council. There was talk about an invite for collegiate working about a week before the budget meeting, about a week before. And then the leader of the council came back and said, well, you're always welcome. My doors are always open for you to come and work with us. I was waiting for you to come to me and nobody came, so therefore I felt obliged to send out an invite. There's been many times we've come to you with suggestions and tried to work together with the council. We've come with motions, we've come with ideas, we've come with suggestions, and it seems like they've been heard because there's a formality that they need to be heard, and then it seems like they've just been dismissed and nothing has actually been taken on board. And I'd like to revert back to a previous question I asked some meetings ago, to which I still haven't had an answer. And the question was, can you give me 3 examples of situations where other parties have made valuable suggestions, contributions, and they've been taken on board and you've actually adjusted what your plan was to accommodate the views and the opinions and the ideas of the wider council. Never mind 3 examples. I think the following month I asked, could you give me 2 examples? Could you give me 1 example today of when we have been accommodated our opinions? Because everybody in here has been elected with the hope of being able to make a positive difference for their community for their community. And if we're to come here and feel that we are being sidelined and that we're not being heard and that our contributions are being disregarded without due consideration, then a lot of people are going to be frustrated and start petitions to perhaps bring about some real change as to how these decisions are made. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cahoot. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cahoot. I can't actually recall any email from yourself to me asking for a meeting, suggesting a meeting, giving me a suggestion about how we may improve something. You might have spoken to other members of the Cabinet, I don't know, I'm sorry, but myself, I've not received anything. I will have to say that social media is not the way to communicate with the Cabinet. We do follow as much as possible what people do say on social media, but that isn't a means of communication that is very effective. We certainly, perhaps, picking up from social media the number of times a councillor has reported or come across fly tipping. We note that. And if it's not been, the member responsible, will no doubt in his portfolio meeting say, look, so-and-so has been reporting this 3 or 4 weeks now, what's happening? That's the sort of conversation we do have in the background. And also he may then respond back to that particular member who's been reporting fly tipping. And so there's all sorts of things that are brought to our attention via social media, which is not really the best way, as I said. I'm really happy to have meetings with yourselves. I do, and so do the rest of the Cabinet, have an incredibly full diary. And so forgive us, but it is quite difficult to squeeze people in sometimes. But we're willing to do that, we certainly are. So do come and talk to us. Talk to us about your suggestions for improving things. Certainly a motion or even a petition isn't necessarily, again, the best way of making things happen.
Sorry, Councillor Patterson, we'll just have one meeting in here, please, members.
Thank you. And so I do still offer to, I'm in the office most days, okay? The door might be shut because I got a meeting with somebody, but I'm talking to somebody, and in between, if you're there, I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation with you as well, as are any of the other members of the Cabinet. So please do take up the opportunities that there are to talk to us informally, talk to us at Cabinet meetings, talk to us here, talk to us via scrutiny meetings, on scrutiny panels, all sorts of different ways you can have your input. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor...
I need to object to that because...
Councillor Cahoot, I'm going to have to ask you to sit down, please. Councillor McGrath, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just seeking some clarification on some of the points made in here and what the Leader of the Council has construed it to mean. So the first point would be, in the report under section 242, it states the budget position is improving and normalising. Could we clarify what is meant by normalising in this context? Does it refer to returning to pre-crisis spending levels, simply reducing the deficit, or something else a bit more sinister? There's also a little bit about staffing. So the same section also states the council staff generally feel valued. Could we understand what evidence underpins this? What engagement was done, including was this done with frontline workers, and how representative was it, and what sort of sample size are we talking about? I want to ensure that feedback includes those most affected by the changes, and not just sort of senior leadership. And finally, in the resource implication section, it stated that the action plan is mostly being delivered within existing resources, but also notes that additional resources may be required. Could we have a clarification on which specific parts of the plan fall outside of existing resources, and how these costs will be monitored and approved to ensure financial transparency? Because each of these three phrases, normalising, staff feel valued, and mostly within existing resources, sound reassuring, but without clear definitions, evidence or costings, it's difficult for members to fully note this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you. You might have to point out some of those points. 2.2.4, was it the finance? Anyway, I will try to answer them. In terms of normalising, what they meant there was for several years now, we have had to, 14 years to be precise, but we have had to make enormous cuts to our budget, which is not what councils used to do in normal times. We used to get an additional bit of money each year, possibly from the government, from council tax, from upping our fees and charges, or all sorts of different ways. But normally we could improve what we were doing because we could improve the size of our budget. But for 14 years, it has been reduced by millions each year. I mean, it's astronomical, the amount of money that we now no longer have to provide services with. So what happened this last year was, between council tax and the government funding and our fees and charges, we almost had enough to break even. Almost. So that's what they meant by normalising. Getting back to that position where we actually have a budget which is at least break even, or hopefully a little bit more sufficient so we can improve matters. In terms of staffing, what they were talking about were the focus groups that they held with staff, whilst they were here on site, or when they did talk to frontline staff. They did talk to other staff about specific issues, I mean finance for instance, but that's what they were talking, that's what they're referring to. But we do, as a council, undertake staff surveys from time to time, or when we did also, I believe they did interview the different staff networks that we have of different complexions, and they had some input into it all as well. And I've forgotten your third point.
The last one was regarding it's mostly within existing resources, so which bits have they identified?
Oh, well, that bit I will have to look at the detail to actually, I'm not sure. I can't give you an answer off the top of my head on that one, so I'll have to actually look at the detail of those. I might be able to do it by the time we actually get to item 13.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Lawson? Sorry, I think it just came off by mistake. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Patterson raised Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, seemed to infer that we didn't actually scrutinise the document. We actually had an informal meeting that was at short notice. 2 of us attended that meeting. Other members, other chairs were actually asked to actually submit anything that they would when they'd actually seen it, because they couldn't actually attend this meeting. It then came back to Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. There wasn't 2 of us, there was actually 3 of us there, where the suggestions that we had made were actually seen within that report. I want to go on and talk about collegiate working, because to me it isn't up to the run-up of a budget. It should be all year round. I want to talk about attending cabinet meetings where you're not made to feel patronised because you ask a question. I also want to tell you about attending a cabinet meeting where one cabinet portfolio holder turned round and said those of us that had left Labour, we lacked integrity. The chair of that meeting didn't even ask for that member to apologise. So if you want to talk about collegiate working and working together, I think the Cabinet needs to look and reflect on having questions answered. And when I ask a question, it's generally because I've exhausted every other line of inquiry. And yes, sometimes I get an answer, sometimes I get, we'll come back to you. We need, as a council, to be working together, and the Cabinet needs to actually reflect on the fact that they are a minority administration. And actually start listening to other councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Yes, collegiate does mean working collegiately all year round, and not just in the run-up to the budget meetings. And that specific incident that you mentioned at the Cabinet meeting, I was the chair. I wouldn't have heard it because I use the loop system, and I can only hear what is said on a microphone. So I'm sorry, I did not hear what was said, and if I had, I might have said something. But so I apologise about that. All I can say, again, I mean, the informal meeting of OSMC, I, of course, was not invited to that. I mean, that was only for Overview and Scrutiny members. And I do apologise to Councillor Burke, because, yes, he was there as well. I was just referring, and when I was referring to the 2 of you, I did forget that he was in the chair. So, yes, there were 3 of you. So I apologise for that. But we would have really welcomed a lot more scrutiny at that meeting. We would have liked a lot more scrutiny at other times as well. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor John Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Patterson, for the presentation. I've got a number of comments or observations on the plan and the comments from the peer challenge group. The first one that always jumps out at me was our local plan and the housing challenge that we face. The plan was set in place back in 2019, and it had a significant housing commitment on Kirklees land. And yet at this point in time, we haven't really got going on our two major sites. And I think they're absolutely right to say this needs accelerating. We're letting down our residents, and also we're putting at risk some safeguarded land and other greenfield and sites that otherwise wouldn't have to be used if we'd got on with Dewsbury Riverside and Bradley a little bit quicker than we have done. So I think that's a fair criticism of us, that we haven't got there as quickly as we should. They also make a comment about we should be showcasing and promoting Kirklees more and our location. And this is something I've banged on about in this council since I was first ever elected. We are the only West Yorkshire authority that links to all the other West Yorkshire authorities. We are the only West Yorkshire authority that links West Yorkshire with South Yorkshire and Greater Manchester, and yet we don't do enough about it. We have fabulous heritage, we have fabulous scenery, we're on the edge of the Pennines. We fail to make enough of this. We should shout about this. And I've spoken many times about making sure that everyone from whatever political party or officers that are representing us at West Yorkshire should know what the Kirklees ask is. We should be clear about what our demands are, and we should ensure that's communicated to everybody so we can all play our part in making sure that we push and promote Kirklees consistently, and that doesn't happen at the moment. I also saw the interesting comment about the partnership board, which would link to the economic plan. I remember the last time we talked about some sort of business board or forum linked to the last economic plan, which sadly I was quite critical of in scrutiny, because it felt like a group of, dare I say, professional meeting attenders and officers. And when I went through the list, there was only one significant private sector employer on that list. And if we're going to make a success of working in partnership with businesses, we need the businesses that are delivering the jobs and the growth in our district as part of that partnership plan, not just a representative from the business, I can't remember what they're called, Chamber of Commerce and things like that, because actually your significant entrepreneurial employers, and we all know those in our own patches, they don't have the time to attend lots of meetings, but it's their insight that we need, and we need to be working with them. And at the moment, we don't do that. It's something, dare I say, that the government's getting wrong at the moment as well, that they're not engaging well enough. And we've seen only this last week that all of the national employers forums have all come together and said that the bill being proposed, the Employers' Rights Bill being proposed by Angela Rayner, is going to damage growth and it's going to damage businesses. And we need to make sure that we don't make those same mistakes. I'd also like to talk a little bit about transformation. This is a bit of my background. And I agree with what the peer challenge says. We're not particularly ambitious. It does feel piecemeal. It does feel that it's owned within silos. Whereas actually, when transformation is very, very successful, you have people who are transformation champions, who will move from one discipline or area to another to use the knowledge and experience they've got. And sometimes you need somebody from outside looking in to help you find those different ways of doing things. And what isn't clear from the plan, but I think is fundamentally important in this bit, is linking it to the digital strategy. Those two things have to sit together, and that vision about how we will communicate in a more digital world needs to help inform and drive our transformational strategy. And I think that needs picking up. We need to focus on better outcomes. I think that's a very valid point as well. And I do see far too many plans and proposals from this council that either there isn't a clear outcome, or if there isn't a clear outcome, it doesn't have a deadline, or it doesn't have a target as to what we perceive as success. And there's a lot of work to do in that space. Clearly, you'd expect me as Chairman of Governance and Audit to comment on the financial difficulties we've been through, and I think that single line budget sustainability is a singular, fundamental, most important issue facing this council. And that links very much to the culture of this council. And again, it's something we've talked about corporate governance and audit and on the budget board.
Councillor Taylor, could you start?
Last couple of years, yeah, I'll wind it very quickly. My concern is that we've launched our council culture. Us as councillors haven't been engaged in it. We're still not. So I think that's a gap as well. There were other points, but I've run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pattison. And once you've answered this, I will draw this.
I was going to say, I think I'll try and. I'm not sure I can really do justice to all of John's questions there, but I'll have a go at some of them anyway. Thank you. Local plan, couldn't agree more. We do need to make sure that we are producing the housing that we're needing, which is why, and also to stop rogue developers coming in, or not necessarily rogue developers, just developers coming in and using greenfield sites, etc., etc. So that is why we're undertaking already our local plan 2 to get ahead of that, so that we can ensure that we have got a 5-year land supply, etc., etc. The 2 major sites that you talk about, they are major sites. They're very big. There's all sorts of reasons why they certainly aren't going to be delivered overnight. They are both either on site. The Bradley one is, there's already work going on there, and the Dewsbury Riverside is already, the infrastructure has gone in there, so work is happening on those sites. But there's all sorts of reasons, because they are so big, because they're so major, why they will take a long time to come through. Again, I couldn't disagree about the showcase in Kirklees. I've always argued that myself as well, and I'm really pleased to see that we now have got a trio of the heritage strategy, a tourism strategy, and a cultural strategy coming together, which is the main point of those 3 coming together, is to showcase Kirklees and to shout about us, and so that we can drag people into Kirklees and Huddersfield and the cultural heart from all over the South Yorkshire authorities, the West Yorkshire authorities, and across the Pennines in Manchester as well. I'm well aware of not only how we are located so centrally to all those areas in the north here, but also how all the rail and road links also, actually, we have got more junctions in Huddersfield than anywhere else, than Leeds, than Bradford, than Wakefield, that actually come, different pathways come through Huddersfield, which actually links us to, as I say, Manchester, the rest of the West Yorkshire authorities, South Yorkshire, etc., etc. So we're really blessed with that positioning, and we really need to make the most of it.
One meeting in here, please.
And finally, the last point I will make is about the partnership board. Yes, certainly, and that is, I think, one of all the recommendations from the report is the one that we not just fully recognise, but we concur with, that we really do need to increase our relationship with the business forums, and that is why different business, and that's why we will be holding a summit in the near future for businesses. It's why we're participating in UK REEF. It's why we're participating in a lot more of the business forums that there are around Kirklees now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. That brings us to the end of agenda item 12. I think that needs to be renamed from holding the executive to account to holding the leader to account. Thank you for that, Councillor Pattison. Agenda item 13, page 73, Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge, Kirklees Council Action Plan, and that's reference from Cabinet. So once again, over to you, Councillor Pattison.
Well, thank you. I won't make any more of an introduction to this other than what I've already said, firstly in the presentation and perhaps also in my responses. So it is here for noting. I do hope you all do that, thoroughly note it, even if we're not asking you to approve it, that you do thoroughly digest it and work with us as well to improve Kirklees for the benefit of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Is that seconded? Councillor Hawkins?
Seconder, Madam Mayor, and watch your chain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first is a question. Whose daft idea was it to spend all that time talking about that when we could have been talking about it under this item, thus meaning that we couldn't ask questions about anything else under the last item, which was the point of having a holding executive to the account meeting in the first place. So sorry, I'm going to be grumpy for a moment, but I'm going to go back to being not grumpy again. One or two things to comment about this particular political item. The first is is that I've got two great concerns about the actual report. The first is to the veracity of the assertions that are made in it, and the second is the urgency of the responses which the Cabinet have given to the report. So to take one of those first, which is the proof of some of the stuff that's been said in here. And I'm going to go through various page numbers to pick things out. I hope you won't mind. So on page 102, for instance, there are two things on here that took my eye. The first is the first bullet point, which says the cessation of non-priority expenditure. When this was first raised, probably, 2.5 years ago now, I would imagine, that was unnecessary expenditure. And the nomenclature has changed over time to non-priority, and I think there's something to be said about that, in that actually a lot of unnecessary expenditure was not ceased, and that seems to have slipped. The second is about accelerating asset sales, and that's already been mentioned by speakers before. I haven't seen any evidence of this either, and you'll recall that I've raised several times in Cabinet, in Council, about pieces of land which the Council is still holding on to, which it could have sold by now, and we could have much needed houses upon. The second is on page 109. And this is what it tells us about how effective our transformation has been. The first one there, going on about being seen as a leader on special educational needs and disabilities. We've already had reference to this in questions made by members tonight. On page 130 of our pack, which is the minutes of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee on 21st of February, under the second paragraph on that page, it says, there have been a significant increase in the number of complaints received with complaints for special educational needs and disabilities. One of those doesn't tally with the other. Either we've transformed it into a good service and the complaints go down, or it's still a poor service and the complaints have gone up. So I would ask for a comment on that, please, as to which is right. And then the second few bullet points on page 109 there as well. Continue to deliver our access strategy. Well, where are the performance indicators which says that people are happier with the response they're getting from those services? Reforming our local planning application process with the aim of making it more modern and efficient. I can't say I've seen any difference so far, I'm sorry. So there is a problem here in that some of the things on here I don't take as read. And these are things that have been presented to the LGA peer for their comments. The second thing is the urgency of responses. So let's go on to page 101. This talks about analysing the direct and indirect costs and implications for our major regen projects. That's something that needs to be done now, because every year we wait, the costs of things change. And yet there's a timescale of a year, March 2026. Over the page, develop a longer-term strategy to support the development of residential provision linked to the local plan. That's got a timescale of March 27. There's 2 years for that. By which time we'll be well into developing the local plan, and we might not have opportunity to incorporate it. And then the one at 3.7 on page 112, refresh all our town centre blueprints to reflect the current financial context, and the timescale for that is March 2027. So that's not going to be worth anything by the time we get to March 27. That needs to be done now as well. I understand officers are very busy people, but we have to prioritise some of this stuff. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So those are the two things I would say. Other than, broadly speaking, I would concur with the recommendations that the LGA peer review has made, with just one omission, which I think is obvious, which is to change the culture of the place. And that means we need to become an organisation which, instead of saying, be grateful for what you're given, actually says, how can I help? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'm not sure that I've followed all of those, I'm afraid. There's a lot of juggling backwards and forwards between pages, so you might have to help me out. The cessation, I'll start with the first one that you mentioned, the cessation of non-priority expenditure, and it used to be unnecessary. Well, I have to say those words are actually the words of the LGA. They're not our words, but and they would have used non-priority as opposed to unnecessary, because perhaps unnecessary is a bit of a pejorative word, i.e. not everybody would agree it's unnecessary, though it might be easier to assume that something, or make an assumption about what is a priority and what is not. Asset sales, I mean, there have been several asset sales. We have speeded those up, and there were several, 2 or 3 sales before Christmas where we did actually raise quite a lot of capital as a result. But there is, of course, the danger of flooding the market. You can only sell so much without reducing the value of your assets. And now this is where I start to get a bit... you then went on to page 109, and perhaps you can remind me which particular bit... oh no, send, that was right, the send issue. Yes, we are known as a leader by the government. I mean, and this is the previous government as well as this one. The work that our officers have been doing in terms of our transformation plan, as far as send provision goes, is a leader across the country. And we have been working nationally with other authorities to promote the work that we're doing alongside the government. It's been recognised that we are a leader in that sense. Why there are more complaints is because of the enormous increase that there has been in applications and people who are referring their children, or staff from schools who are referring children as in need of SEN in support, because they believe they have special educational needs of one sort or another. And the complaints are about the lack of time, not the service that they are getting. The timeliness and perhaps how quickly their application or assessment is dealt with, not the actual service that they receive ultimately. Once we have had a difficulty in keeping up with the amount of assessments that we've had to make. And that's not just ourselves, that's been, again, a national phenomenon. And now this is where you went back, I think, to page 101 at that point. And you did start to lose me, I'm afraid.
112.
Sorry?
Page 112.
112.
Timescales.
Oh, timescales of anything. Yeah, I mean, we have to be realistic in our timescales. I have to say, officers were very keen to say, oh, September 25, oh, March 26, oh, November 25, oh, March 26. And I personally actually had to say to them, you're really going to manage to do all of that in that shorter space of time? Come on, be a little bit more realistic in these timescales. So, I mean, that's why certainly some of them are realistic, because 2027, the local plan isn't going to be on time, available until then, the new local plan. So that some of these recommendations and our responses do take some time. And I want to make sure that we do it properly, and that we don't rush a job just to meet a deadline that we've put in a report for tonight. It needs to be properly assess the outcome that we actually want, and make sure that we can achieve that. I think, if I may, I shall leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some comments that are directed not at the officers' names next to the actions, but towards the Cabinet and the leader. First of all, start off by agreeing with something that Councillor Hall said. About the asset sales, we do have quite a little bit of scrips and scraps around the place that ought to be sold off. A few went off in Cleckheaton recently. What puzzles me, though, well, what annoys me a little bit actually, is that the proceeds of those sales go into the capital plan. Now, we've just heard quite a lot of criticism of the capital plan, and to be chucking that money into that pot, whereas it could be used locally in wards, and I'm thinking about the Red House Museum in a larger scale, much larger scale. But surely there should be some kind of matrix that we can use that portions off some of that for local use that can be of benefit if they are losing an asset like a piece of heritage building or an open space. That said, I've just picked out a couple of points, like I said. So there's an action to strengthen the cross-party budget group. It's very good. As an attendee, though, I'd like to know what that actually means in real terms. We've had a lot of instruction through the group, but perhaps it's time for that to be expanded. This is currently, this is not an area of co-production, and so far it's been about the mechanics of budget making and its limitations. So informative, but not collaborative. There is a welcome reintroduction of the budget book that holds live information, and early access to this information is vital for forming the budget and the opposition amendments alike. So can we have access to that as soon as it goes live? It's stated for August, so let's try and keep to that time scale. The lack of private investment in the blueprint and our cultural heart is conspicuous by its absence. At some point, we're going to have to get out from our borrowing and grant bubble and get private business to co-produce projects if we want them to last for the long term and be sustainable. The action plan also asks for continuation of the local plan working, including cross-party and local engagement. So far, it has been fairly quiet, I feel. Work will be happening on reviewing Greenbelt soon, if not now, and I'm sure that as members, we'd all like to take a keen interest in those discussions and what considerations are being made for local green spaces. There's a line about the alignment with the West Yorkshire Growth Plan, a plan that came to WICA scrutiny a few weeks ago. The plan relies on a business growth density model, which has been used successfully elsewhere, but it's based on corridors of density growth. Now, it has its own performance indicators, which include what classes as new growth and what is displacement, and what leaves, indeed. That's important, and I think we can't really wait for a WICA scrutiny panel to come back to this chamber. We need to be in there, we need to be in the room when that information goes live, and we need to be on the front foot with that information. There's talk of areas of improvement that we've made, and I said before in my previous statement it would be churlish not to recognise those. There have been improvements, and it's important to note those and give credit where credit's due. Lastly, we talk about an eye to the future. I think this was recommendation number 8, wasn't it? An eye to the future. And as I said in the beginning, that I'd ask Cabinet members responsible how they individually are going to support this plan. How are you, as the political decision makers, going to bring this into operational reality? And how are you going to include councillors and communities in that process? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Again, I'll just say on the asset sales, I mean, you know, there have been asset sales. We can't sell everything all at the same time, and individual little plots of land might be taking longer than perhaps bigger plots for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know. I can't go into the detail on that, but certainly we don't want to sell all the family silver, but we are having to sell some of it, I'm afraid, to bring in that capital receipt. And that capital receipt, that has to go into a central pot. I mean, yes, you could benefit perhaps, or your ward could benefit from the sale of Red House, but there are other wards where there's absolutely no benefit because there's nothing to be sold in their ward. There's no capital receipt coming from their ward. And there's different, it's not like for like either, is it? There are different capital receipts that we earn. A little bit of land here, Red House there, or something even bigger over here. It would be totally inequitable to say, right, well, Red House has been sold and therefore we can give it all to Cleckheaton. We have to think about the totality of everything that we need to do for all Kirklees residents. Cross-party budget group, yes, it could perhaps be improved. So let's have suggestions of what you would like to know about. The budget book will help, but there is always, each quarter, financial monitoring.
Again, sorry, one meeting, please. We've only got about just over 15 minutes to go, so please.
I will try. I'll speed up a bit. Financial monitoring and other ways that you can be involved in keeping an eye on our finances. The cultural heart, of course, I mean, that's the whole point of the cultural heart. It is about bringing in private business. The light would not have opened this week. It would not have chosen to build here or to establish itself here in Huddersfield if we weren't doing what we're doing in terms of the cultural heart. That is entirely, private business doing that. We're really pleased to welcome them. There are other private businesses looking at different places across Kirklees because they know that we are serious about ensuring investment. So the Wicker Growth Plan, that's we talk about, it's not just, it goes to the Wicker board as well as coming back here. The Wicker Growth Plan has to tie in with our own and with the government's, of course, as well. And that's this is just the start of that process at the moment. So I'm not quite sure that I can really add much more to that. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. There are no more questions or comments on this matter. So back to you, Councillor Patterson. Right of reply?
I don't think I need one.
Okay, that's fine. The report is here for information and to note only. So move on to agenda item 14, which is page 123, the minutes of meetings of committees as included in the council agenda at item 14 are here for information. Agenda item 15, questions and comments to chairs of committees, subcommittees, panels on matters within their terms of reference. Any member may ask a question of a chair or spokesperson followed by one supplementary. Are there any questions or comments to the chairs of committees or panels or nominated spokespersons? Councillor McGrath, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and this will be the last time I get to consult you as that, so well done on your term, and thank you very much. So this is a question to Councillor Cooper as Chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee. Could you share your thoughts on how the Snow Warden scheme, proudly championed by Office on the 18th of November 2024, fared over the winter months? And did it sparkle like fresh snow, or unlike the January snow, melt under pressure?
We did look at snow wardens and how they were employed during the crisis we had there. I think one of the things we need to do is get some feedback from the snow wardens about how they felt about the role that they had. And in fact, that was something we actually asked at the Environment Scrutiny Panel, so that we'd come back with that information and tell us, because the council did say they were monitoring what the snow wardens were doing. And so we wanted to see that. We wanted to see what that feedback was. We hear things anecdotally, but it would be good to hear directly from that. So we will see what comes back from it. We've had the last meeting of the Environment Scrutiny Panel for this municipal year, but if if whoever's chairing the meeting next year is able to look at that, I'd appreciate it. It might be me, it might not.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Sheard, please. Sorry, yes, you do get a supplementary. Sorry.
Thank you. So, just in your opinion, do you think the popularity of the scheme might have caught the council off guard? I ask because a resident of Honley in Home Valley North eagerly signed up just 5 days after the announcement was made to all councillors on the 18th of November. I was met with radio silence when I signed him up, and when I chased it just before the cold snap in January, I was told that the council had run out of shovels. Now, I know the supply chains are tricky, but what do you think in your role should be the lead time of the special edition shovels? And even when someone is lucky enough to receive one of these special edition shovels, does the council honestly believe, obviously not to you, but do you believe that a 10 kilogram single bag of grit is enough for a snow warden to realistically help their neighbours and community get out and about and be refused extra grit when they have used it?
Snow warden is not just for Christmas or when it snows, and what I mean by that is I think we need to be prepared for when snow wardens, so they've got a supply of grit. They may come with their own shovel. You know, I do. I've got my own shovel, and I've shoveled some grit in my time. That's for sure. Yeah, and so I think being up on the ball, being ready, so months ahead there is a supply of grit. They know what they're doing. But we can't look at just the snow wardens and the grit that they're provided with in isolation. We've also got to look at it as a wider grit strategy, which looks at the use of grit bins and the misuse of grit bins. I think we need stickers on grit bins, which actually say, what the purpose of this grit is, not doing your drive, those sort of things. I think we need to be very clear about that. I think it'll be very helpful about what the expectations are of people using that grit. I think we've also got to look at community buildings and the access to those. One of the things, we're involved with the Newsham Centre. We're on the management board of that. And so we did get some grit to enable people to use the building. But it's not just schools. We've got to look at wider sort of buildings to do that. So yeah, the snow wardens are important. Yes, the grit that they're provided with has got to be adequate to do the job. But we've got to understand what that means. For one person, a 10 kilogram bag might be just about right. But they're blooming heavy bags, aren't they? But some people might be doing an awful lot of work. So not just wardens, a wider grit policy. And also looking at some of the streets which should be gritted, those exception streets, where we've got one in our ward particularly, which is on a very steep slope. It's an accident. It's got 3 grit bins on it for a reason. When they're empty, it just becomes an absolute hazard. So I hope that's helped deal with your killer supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Sheard, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Cooper, you're a popular chap today. This one's also for you. My granddad's a local business owner running down to earth gardening services in Birstall, and he uses the Dewsbury tip quite often to dispose of gardening waste. Now, with Nab Lane tip being shut, Dewsbury now must accommodate for the whole of North Kirklees. Since the closure of Nab Lane, we've seen up to 45-minute to an hour waits to get into Nab Lane tip. Today, I went, not Nab Lane. Nab Lane shut, you shut it, didn't you? Dewsbury. Today, I went to the Dewsbury tip with my granddad, and Network Rail has started to work at the Dewsbury site, which has now only exacerbated the congestion problem at Dewsbury. Now, I have questioned Cabinet members about the issue of congestion leading up to the Dewsbury tip. I have been told that something's being done, but I've started to take what the Cabinet says now with a pinch of salt. So could we please have the issue of the congestion leading up to the Dewsbury tip raised at the Environment Scrutiny Panel, and can we look at it a little bit more in depth and see where the Council's going wrong? Thank you.
Yes, we could look at that. We have had our last meeting of the municipal year. So it will be up to the next chair of the Environment Scrutiny Panel, which may be me, it may not be me, to take that up. I think we also need to look at wider issues, which is the impact of on things like fly tipping. Are we seeing an increase in fly tipping at the moment? Are we seeing people not prepared to wait a long time at the other places which are open? We've had Meltham Tip closed Mondays and Tuesdays, and that's had a big impact on the other tips around and about waste and recycling centres around. So I think we need to look at those sort of impacts and see what that's had. One of the things we've noted in the ward that we represent is that there has been an increase in fly tipping. That's something that we're having to deal with, and I'm sure many of you are on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just that one small element of what you're talking about, and I don't really want to hold up your motion, but I will. So yeah, we do need to look at it not in isolation, that small element. I do understand some of the reasons that services have been diminished. It is all over the place. It's the decisions that the cabinet makes, but it's a background of an array of cuts that have happened to council services over the years, which is there. But yeah, I look forward to your supplementary.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Shears? Been let down. Okay, Councillor. No? Anyone got any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Then we'll... Councillor Ali Arshad.
Supplementary is a number of roadworks that are going on in Savile Town as it stands. So the tip has got an entrance coming into it closed. So all traffic is coming through Savile Town, and Savile Town itself has additional roadworks going on. Can we possibly do something here to alleviate the pressure? A journey into and through Savile Town, which normally takes a matter of minutes, is taking half an hour plus at all times of the day. It really does need to be looked into.
Me, I mean, I feel, I really feel I ought to refer it to the cabinet member for environment. So I will refer it to the cabinet member for response, because ultimately that's environment and highways is not the area I'll scrutinise, but it's really the cabinet member's responsibility to answer. So if you don't mind on this occasion, I'll refer it to the cabinet member.
Councillor Ahmed, this slot is for chairs of committees, not for yourself, so you don't have to answer that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm conscious of time. So under paragraph 16.2, Council Procedure Rules, I'd like to move the motion straight to just propose and second the motion and move straight to a vote so that we can get it through this evening rather than lose time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. So we will need to vote on it. So it's been proposed by Councillor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Armour that we move to agenda item 16 so the motion can be heard. Could you all vote showing your hands, please? So to move to the motion, could you just vote with a show of hands? All those for? Okay. All. Yeah. Okay. All those against? All those against to move to the motion? Okay. So that is carried, so we will move to the motion. Okay. Item 16, so the motion is submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14 as to protecting local democratic oversight in planning decisions. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't give a speech, conscious of time, so I'll just formally move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Are there any comments on the motion? Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cooper.
It's quite barefaced, actually. Look cheek them putting this in after the way that the Conservative government has diminished the power of local planning committees over the years. And you look at this motion, and you think, how have they got the audacity to actually put this motion in? So I'd oppose it.
We never clarified that we were going to the vote. We said we were going to hear the motion. We didn't say we were going to hear the motion and go straight to the vote.
That's not what I moved. Yeah. Oh, that's what I thought. I moved paragraph 16.2 to move straight to the vote. That's what I actually moved, and that's what we voted on.
What I seconded, Madam Mayor. You voted against it anyway, so it's irrelevant.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Councillor Taylor. Thank you for that clarity. So we will just move to the vote, and we will vote using our consoles, please. Okay, so that falls. Okay, so that's the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night.